What's up? Welcome back to the Metalhead Car Show. The Corvette, not just one of the most iconic American cars ever, but truthfully, one of the most iconic sports cars ever. You see them everywhere. The racetrack, the car meet, the retirement home, they do well at almost everything sports car related. But today I want to go look at 5 Corvettes you've probably never heard of. So let's get right into it. Mid-engine, all-wheel drive, V8. Sound familiar? Well, it's not that one. The Corvette Indie. The Corvette Indie was shown off in 1986, originally being made for the shows out of chicken wire and paper mache, but it's truly one of the most revolutionary Corvettes GM has ever designed. As until very recently, this was the only all-wheel drive Corvette ever made. Despite still using the same 350 V8 they were using in the Corvettes at the time, this one was one of the very few mid-engine cars GM ever did. And I think style-wise, it was kind of showing where they were planning on going. It's super rounded and super curvy and sort of looks like an XJ220 to some extent. But suppose the pointy and boxiness you saw in the C4 Vettes, I think this really showed where their minds were at for the future. Now obviously this thing never came out, but it was just one step forward for GM to actually make a mid-engine Corvette. Next up, the Corvette California. Sure gave some people Vietnam flashbacks from saying that. Now, the Corvette California was made in 1980 as a California spec car using a 305 V8. To fight emissions and fight fuel economy, this thing was given a 180 horsepower 305 V8 that was kind of deemed one of the worst Corvettes ever made. Now, they bragged about the fact that it only made 10 less power than the standard Corvette everywhere else was getting, but that also did kind of mean a 350 V8 was making 190, I think actually 195 horsepower. Not something to be boasting about. These things are actually likely quite rare, or I'm full of crap and there's this many, but despite its rarity, this may be a Corvette you want to stay away from. Next up, the 1983 Corvette. For those who don't know, the C3 Corvette ran from 1968 to 1982, and the C4 Corvette ran from 1984 to 1996. Now, some people have said they waited till 1984 to release the C4 Corvette. But in reality, the plan was to release the C4 Corvette in 1983, likely for the 20th anniversary of the Corvette. What happened was, the Corvette wasn't actually ready for the new emission standards that were made for 1983, so they were all crushed. Every single one. But what ended up happening was, the day they were crushing all these cars, they crushed pretty much all of them, and that was it. Day was done, workers were going home, and there was one car left. And the guy who's in operation of this Corvette Crush-a-thon kind of deemed he couldn't bring himself to crush it. He thought it was just too cool because it was the brand new pre-production Corvette, kind of. So he stole it. He hid it away so it wouldn't be crushed. Later down the road, he brought it out and brought it to what I believe is the Corvette Museum. And it made like 220 horsepower from a carbureted 350. Truthfully, it's not an amazing car. But the fact that it exists at all is very, very cool. Next up, the 1974 454 Corvette. Due to a lot of American cars in the 1970s being smogged out to the point of making no power whatsoever, and the Corvette only making like 165 horsepower, Chevy decided to make a brand new 454 Corvette. Now these things did exist in the 60s, but going to the 70s, they deemed it to be this kind of really new, cool, revolutionary way of making power in the Corvette. And it sort of did. It was making 280 horsepower, which, again, from a car that was making 165 earlier, was a massive step up. Issue was, the car was also increased to almost 3,700 pounds, making it one of the heaviest Corvettes in history. And despite it still made what was kind of a crazy amount of horsepower for 1974, it was also still kind of slow and has faded into obscurity. And last up on the list, the Wankel Corvette. Yes, there's a Dorito Eagle Corvette. So late 1960s and early 1970s, Wankels were starting to reach out mainly to Chevy and Ford and start making Wankel versions of the Mustang and the Corvette. And in the Corvette, what we got was a 4-rotor Wankel rotary engine that I heard was one of the fastest Corvettes ever made. It made this much power, but I can't quite remember, and was truly one of the most radical Corvettes ever. It was, well, as you've seen from these photos, mid-engine, and gullwing doors, and unlike a lot of the mid-engine Corvette prototypes we've seen, this thing was almost production ready. It almost happened. Now, despite being near his retirement, Zora didn't actually want to make the mid-engine Corvette he always dreamed of, being a Wankel-powered Corvette. So, kind of out of stubbornness to some extent, this car never happened. But I want to know, how many of these cars did you already know about? And what are some completely ridiculous and obscure Corvettes that I miss? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed what you've seen. I post on Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, and I'll see you later.